Alright, so recently I had a conversation with a few pretty hardcore materialists and atheists, I guess. I was talking to them about the Jester clown archetype, see what they think. I really want to talk to like people that are, like the most skeptical, because I just want to figure out, what's going on with it, if there's anything actually strange happening, and some of them seem to have thought it was pretty strange. I'll I'll go over as many of the comments as I can. Hold on, let me just get this shown on the computer. So we started off. I'll sort of just read through everything for you guys. Hopefully, it'll give you more information. Well, I mainly want to see if the headspace is different for people not of our cultural reference. I think if we try to compare artworks that depict the experience with ourselves, we will find similarities. I want to see if those similarities are the same with people of different cultures and exposures. Surely the signature headspace of DMT won't be the same because the cultural references aren't there. So I just gave examples of the headspace. Here, you know what, I'll make them bigger. So this is the DMT headspace in a nutshell. So all of these pictures depict DMT, and they all have things in common with each other. You can see the Jester archetype reoccurring. And this was a clown that I see in my heavy open-eyed visuals, like heavy trips on Farmawaska or Silawaska. I'll often see a clown like reaching under my bed. I even drew him. I'm always scared that they're gonna like pull me under. This was a drawing that I did a long time ago. You can see the clown. So I already knew that the clown archetype was reoccurring a lot. So then I wrote, surely we could make this item 1, and then item 2 would be a different psychedelic type theme with jungle archetypes, and ask them which imagery do they identify with most. If anything, it will tell me a lot about how different the experience is to people of different cultural references. If you can't see the value in that, then that's a shame. You can easily grab a bunch of different art translating the psychedelic experience with carnival themes and a bunch of trippy jungle type imagery and bring it to a culture that's primitive and ask them which imagery do they most identify with. Terence McKenna talked about how he dosed people and they described their trip as a circus. On my YouTube video, the viewer statistics tell me where the viewers are coming from and how many of them searched like things that have to do with clown DMT or Jester DMT or seeing jokers on DMT. So I'll give you a little bit of a thing you can see each one. So obviously people are searching these things, so they're obviously seeing them and associating it with it. So those are the viewer analytics for the two Jesters. Prove people all around the world are searching this. Now why is that? I know how many people around the world are searching those phrases on YouTube and provided the link to my video. What about repeated and excessive? Oh, okay, never mind. And then he said, I can absolutely see the value in comparing psychedelic art from our culture and other cultures. It is a mystery I have thought about a lot. It could give some insight into how psychedelics affect the brain, and I would love to see some data on it. I'm just pointing out that even if they also had some art with Jester clown themes, it wouldn't mean anything groundbreaking. Jesters are really just entertainers, an archetype that is very common with nearly all human societies. And then you can disregard this because I showed him the wrong information, so he made a percentage out of the wrong stuff. But he said even if a higher percentage of people were experiencing clowns and jester imagery, it wouldn't really be all that surprising. After all, people are scared of clowns. And then he gives statistics on like clowrophobia and you know, fear of clowns and all that. And I just told him to read the statistics again for my viewer thing. Or I gave him the wrong screenshot, and then I posted the right one. And then I said the fact that everyone is searching that as evidence of something. It's a reoccurring pattern. The main question is, why does smoking DMT cause people to encounter jester, clowns, tricksters, and jokers? Why would DMT produce this entity as a phobia response when the fear of heights is just as high, if not higher, in most people? For me, at least. People are afraid of many things, but it still doesn't explain why DMT triggers the experience of clowns. That's what this is proving. It's already evidence that that is beyond modern science, because they don't know shit about DMT and its trigger potential for theorized archetypes of the collective unconscious. And then, yeah, I said personally I have clownophilia. I found clowns arousing, female clowns, that is. And then, alright, so then Flickbict said, after my clown jester experience on Oral Rue and smoked freebase Bufotenin Rue, for me they came to room of eroticism. Two giant jester clowns, one bending down, tapped on my vision, shaking it widely. I researched the jester. I remember the strongest impression was that the jester was the only source in court that could safely tell the truth to the face of the king. The U was also allowed a certain privilege, that is, his words were without offense, but the U could not offer his remonstrances in earnest. He had to make use of the jokes, songs, and dance. And so I gave them more evidence, and I'll go through that in just a sec. I just want to run through some of this stuff. This was a post that a guy called Open Mind made. He says, I have, and the first time I read over the list, I was quite surprised to see that a lot of entities that I've encountered were described exactly on the to the T on the last. He was talking about the hyperspace sort of legend for entities that have been encountered. It's on DMT Nexus. I'll go through it with you guys later. He says, I had these encounters before about the specific various entities, and that seemed to be somewhat common occurrences. So he goes through like the flirty fairies, hyperspace jesters, calls them, could be also called harlequins or fools. You guys can sort of pause that and read through that if you want. I think I read most of the in the other videos, so you can definitely go back through that. And then another archetype is the circus ringleaders. And then another guy in that forum said, yeah, I get the clown thing. I was just sort of gathering more evidence and more quotes from DMT Nexus, and this one's you know, covered in evidence of it. Here, I'll just go up to it. So this guy said, I recently had this pretty intense go with DMT. I had a hard time remembering what I saw. The only thing I could remember was this clown Joker face. I'm not exactly like the pic, but pretty similar. Didn't feel like the entity, though. It was moving with all the psychedelic pattern around it in this weird dimension I was. The only thing I remember from hyperspace, I heard about aliens and Buddhas and stuff, but shit clowns and chessboard patterns. I remember I was in this place where everything was moving psychedelic patterns, and there was no walls, really just moving psychedelic patterns with a chessboard texture with a black and white in the background. Everything was like the neck of the Joker in the pic, but black instead of red, like a chessboard, and it was spinning a lot, and things went crazy pretty fast after they got pressed on the back because it was getting too intense. I got pressed from the break because it was I got pressed from the break because it was getting too intense, and all I was seeing was like a spinning lottery machine, but with psychedelic dimensions going in front of my eyes. I was wondering if anyone else saw the Joker. DMT is one hell of a drug, Jesus. And then this guy said, I remember reading a DMT trip report where someone posted that exact picture, but they described the entity as a jester with an aura-like space around his body. Checkerboard patterns and clowns are the norm, and they always get described in hyperspace. Can't wait until you visit the circus. The circus sounds really interesting, really freaking troubling, and awesome as shit at the same time. Kind of happy that I'm not alone experiencing this. And then we found it, and this guy said, I had a few Jester circus elements to my mushroom acid trips, especially in the closed eyes. On mushrooms, the Jester figure looked a lot like the pic you posted, it holding a 3D box that spun, hovering above its hands, and one of those visuals I've ever had. On acid, I would describe the similar visuals resembling a clown, very kaleidoscopic-ish, spiraling out and multiplying, very 2D, less dimensional and profound. And here, a lot of the reports in the Spirit Molecule book had clowns in them. With one of my first DMT trips, all my friends turned into clowns, and the trees were everything and turned into clowns. And I was like, what the fuck? Why clowns? Glad I don't have a fear of them. And this guy said, yes, my first breakthrough, I was introduced to the same clown Joker entity in the same chessboard pattern. Definitely experienced this. And then, yeah, Wolf said, yeah, I get the clown thing. And then this guy said, yeah, I've been there. First time I ever went all the way there, all the space around me was checkered pattern fluctuating through the most beautiful spectrum of colors. I was greeted by two Jester clown figures, and it was all black. Other times have been black, but there was very circusy feel. And let me just go through, try to find more for you guys. And then this guy said, I remember reading a thread a while back about talking about a circus clown theme in their DMT trip. I would have to search for it. Maybe it has to do with our fear or fascination with clowns. It's no wonder just chess clowns, jesters are commonly themed in Wonderland. Okay, so that's the one of the big ones. And I'll go over one more with you guys. So, after a good hit of DMT, and I was staring straight into the face of the Joker Jester, it felt as if he symbolized the master of all my ups and downs in life, the one who put me into the wheel of birth and death and spun it. This was a bit frightening at first. With Jokers, here's how I see it. I read in Rick Strassman's The Spirit Molecule that I found reports of Jester clown-like beings, entities, to be a bit fast. It's not completely ridiculous, thus I was if not completely ridiculous. Thus I was skeptical about any real foundation of the experience of these Jokers as anything other than self-imagined hallucinations. I never thought that I, of all people, would have a DMT Joker trip myself, but then one day I did. It was a kaleidoscope image of the Jester face, amazingly frightening. After this experience, I couldn't help but wonder if the Joker I witnessed was an entity apart from myself, such as described in Rick Strassman's reports, or if he is simply projected from its own subconscious. I can remember being frightened of clowns as a young boy, never really knowing why, so I wondered if there was any real connection. I had to delve into what the Joker really is and what it symbolized in terms of my own life. There is an audio lecture on Alan Watts where he talks about Jokers and the role they played in the monarchical governments in history, and I feel that his insight on the Joker was very significant for me, at least. In terms of life and existence in general, check it out on YouTube. The function of the Joker is to make a mockery of all the conventional notions that we cling to remind us the absurdity of it all. For the Joker, life is a game. In time I realized that the Joker was not some figure who had control over me as a puppet, but rather I am a Joker who plays the game of life. Thus I am fearing all along what I feared all along was my own true nature. This happened to be a very deep personal experience, personal understanding for me. What I ask is this: any of you Shroomery members can relate to this. Nearly every time with Salvia I go to the carnival, you have discovered an archetype. Congratulations. Want to hear my Joker experience? Please. And then he goes into this big Joker experience. You guys can read that one because I don't really want to take up too much time with it. You can just pause it and go through it if you would like. I'm just showing you guys as much evidence as I can, all the Jester stuff. And then we're going to go into some of the sort of philosophy on if it's a reoccurring pattern or if it's a coincidence or not. And so, although I feel compelled to watch, hold on, let me just see if he's talking about the Jester. Well, whatever, you guys can read through that. Let me see. Yeah, so this guy says that he's also been looking into it. You guys can just read through this stuff if you want. Just stop it, pause it, go through it. I really urge you to because it's more evidence. There we go. So interesting. I mean, to me, there are too many reports that frequently state this type of theme. Surely not all these people already had the same ideas floating around in their head. As said above, some people encounter this archetype have never heard of it. The best evidence really is that the archetype of a circus. It's just so appropriate when you dissect in a manner of why a carnival. Eventually you'll be laughing because of how obvious it is in its context, and that's something that I mentioned as well. It's so poetically fitting that even everyone talks about having a grin on psychedelics. Like, you wonder why. Like, all those poetic ideas. It's so fascinating. And then this guy says, I have seen the same Joker type face on mushrooms and nitrous oxide. I know a few other people that have seen the same thing. I've been searching all the information I can to find all sorts of these experiences. In my opinion, this face didn't look like your typical carnival-esque Joker at all, but there was aspects of the Joker archetype, such as a big mischievous grin and a trickster-type vibe, but at the same time a childish and innocence. And you guys can read through more of that. Let me just... Now that I think about it, I had a friend had a breakthrough right where I'm sitting this about a year ago, where he saw a clown that turned into something evil. He was cool, and since he enjoyed the bad trip imagery, I found it insanely interesting. I'm just trying to read through more. Okay, so that's probably for this one. I saw this dude on 25i. He's so damn confusing. Yeah, okay. So we definitely can see that most of the people are seeing the Joker or Jester archetype. Now let me just get back to our conversation. Now that you have all that evidence. So let me just get back here. And now he says, I would argue that a fear of heights is much less symbolistic and would overall be a strange thing to trip about. Are you still afraid of heights if you are nowhere near anything high? It seems a lot easier to avoid thinking about, and a lot harder to hallucinate a cliff than a Jester. But regardless, it's not like the Jester symbolism is the only thing that people see when tripping. I'm not even sure if it's the most common. Honestly, this is the first time that I've heard about it. I usually hear about some sort of geometric elves or something. But my point is that I think we can agree that at least some of what you were seeing in hyperspace is affected by your culture and your subconscious, including what you are afraid of. Comparing this to the number of people that are uncomfortable and scared of clowns, lots of people seeing clown imagery doesn't seem to be any evidence of anything. Regardless, do some kind of test. Doing some kind of test would reveal a lot. Please share with the Shroomery if you end up conducting any kind of experiment. Sound okay? Yeah, I was kind of being a dick for, but yeah, I said there's no reason why clowns should be occurring this often when triggered by DMT. It happens in people that love or hate or indifferent to clowns. It doesn't matter what kind of emotional attachment you have. If you can't see that there's something, there's meaning to this occurrence, then you aren't thinking deeply enough into it. I think you are thinking a little too deeply into it. And I recounted those pictures. It comes to 36%. Of people that are searching my video on YouTube. Still not a very impressive minority. That being said, 36% isn't nothing. However, it's far too early to guess what that meaning of it could be. It could range from anywhere from a simple coincidence to people having a strong emotion about clowns to there being some sort of underlying unity subconscious. And please stop trying to guess my worldviews and beliefs. You're doing a terrible job at it. I, for one, could be ecstatic if I thought that there was a reason to believe that we had some sort of collective unconscious. It is my personal belief that if humanity could attain some sort of kind of telepathy or unity consciousness, that we could ascend past all the petty disagreements and trickery that plague our society today. But based on what I've read, I don't see any evidence of this. Don't get me wrong, though. I'm not saying absence of evidence is evidence of absence. The unity unconscious you're hoping for could very well be a reality. I simply disagree with your arguments. And then Flickbix said, out of all of the things possible in drug-fueled imagination, getting more than a third doesn't exactly seem unimpressive. And he was talking about my YouTube statistics on how many people were searching. But again, this was a search for DMT. Sounds like smoking DMT, something a first world country does, where the clowns and jesters that have been associated with it, at least since Terrence McKenna talked about his DMT Circus experience, supposedly smoking the stuff in the 60s that could have influenced Strassman's group and all of us today. Clowns are a trippy archetype, colorful and funny, sometimes a little uncomfortable in that the truths that they provide in jest. If it's not an imposed archetype on the experience or a psychedelic cultural influence, maybe the spirit of DMT picks an interface it deems appropriate to the culture individual. These are themes. It's just hard to surely say they haven't been if it wasn't referenced or not. And he said, even subconsciously prior to the experience. And yeah, this guy, he's a pretty hardcore materialist. He was kind of like making fun of everyone that they're all delusional and stuff like that. And he said, one last thing, I'm pretty sure I'll regret saying this, but hopefully Sleepy E will get a brief moment of happiness from. Of course, I've seen or experienced Jester-like things on DMT and shrooms. I've experienced a million other things, though, too. It's not really that big of a coincidence, even. And he said, well, let's not get carried away. Remember, it's 36% of views on his YouTube video about the Jester archetype, a number that is also obviously skewed in his favor and as it could get. We would need much more of a refined test to get an accurate number. And I said, this thread I made on DMT Nexus is about the Jester. They see it too. I've mapped the occurrence of the Jester and it's far above chance and coincidence. I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with you guys here. I need to talk to people who aren't militant materialists, accepting only the evidence that supports their views, whichever that may be. I need materialists who are unbiased and open-minded. And you know, sometimes I can be a bit of a dick, but, you know, everyone's also a bit of a dick, so. And this guy said, I'd accept any evidence that can be proven using scientific method. You're very confused on who is being biased and not open-minded. I'm willing to change my beliefs if there's evidence to the contrary. Religious, spiritual people almost never will when it comes to their religious doctrine. Whatever that type of religion or spiritualism may be. Materialists and atheists believe what they believe because the current evidence of science supports, or the lack of evidence supports your claims. You can't say the same. And I said, I don't mind discussing, I just need more opinions on this because of people who aren't as invested in their views of reality. I need to know exactly why this doesn't qualify as evidence worth looking into. Surely if the tables were turned and you had similar evidence to support your views, you would say that it is undeniable. And let me just go through more of the evidence on here. When I asked DMT Nexus if they see the clown archetype, and then this guy said, the Jester, my very first entity I ever met. In my first toke of DMT, I, lacking a scale, used the corner of a playing card to put a spoot of spice on some marijuana. When I smoked it, I saw the spinning mandala that would break apart and reform itself into a playful but seeming somewhat condescending, mocking Jester. I concluded that it must be because I used the Joker from the pack of cards that I used to pack the bowl, so it was lingering in my thoughts, and it came out again in the form of hallucination. That's when I saw the DMT art of others, much like your own, depicting the very same Jester, and I had heard of machine elves, but never of Jesters. The fact that so many people perceive this archetype is quite fascinating. Perhaps the fact that I used a Joker card as a spoon was merely a coincidence. Perhaps only half serious, I interpret the Jester as a kind of playful guardian of the first gate. If he frightens you, then the DMT is not for you, and you should stop. But if you want to play with the Jester, smoke more, as they say, and he'll open the door into the next dimension. I remember once having broken through, flying through hyperspace at 1,000,000 miles a minute. Out of the corner of my eye, these Jester appeared and gave me a thumbs up symbol, as if you say you made it. My first DMT experience brought me eye to eye with the Jester. Some friends also saw the Jester on their breakthroughs. Once, one friend saw me on the breakthrough. Hyperspace is full of crazy carnival. Hyperspace is full of characters, and Jesters at the crazy carnival are rather common. In my experience, they aren't even very malevolent, but definitely tricksters full of tomfoolery. I also encountered Jesters twice at least, as memory serves. First time I was at a trip, I overshot and ended up smashed by this Jack-in-the-Box sort of Jester. Another I remember I was a trip where I ended up in some sort of cavern place, and there was they were moving extremely fast and hurting and prodding me. Another similar archetype, mythological character met by some people is Ganesh. The big question for me has always been, why Jesters at all when it could be anything? Without a doubt, a consistent thing within the DMT universe with so many people. What is the significance of this? And I'm not sure why they are so predominant in hyperspace, but the reoccurrence of symbols, characters, and archetypes is so intriguing. I prefer the concept of seeing Jesters as a result of wanting entertainment, even if it's subconscious. The first one I saw put me on quite a show, and I was pleased to see how impressed I was. The Jester really like attention, in my experience. And then I had one experience in which I felt like I was at the bottom of a deep well, and I could only see a circle of the sky, and then 4 clowns leaned over the edge and started laughing at me. Not too sure what that was all about. And thought this seemed relevant to this discussion of clown archetypes. This first article speaks on the clown role archetype occurring across cultures. Not totally sure as to all the historical accuracy behind some of the claims, because it's not really cited at all. But a cursory Google search revealed at least 2 Native American tribes, the Lakota and the Pubble, have ritual clowns in their tribes. Those 2 comments I actually just read. I didn't even know that they were there. But anyways, so let me get back to our conversation. This guy said, I refrained from commenting on this thread for a while until I realized, because it seemed that some of you were a tad bit too sensitive. I'm glad I talked about it more. Religion, spiritual, yeah, okay, whatever. To be honest, I glanced through some of your evidence, but I did not give it my total attention, and found some of the things said on this thread bollocks, and it seemed to me like you were the only one to display anecdotal evidence and coincidence. Although I can't be sure because I didn't read everything. I had some things that I did want to comment to you about from previous posts you made. However, I binged on Shroom the past couple days and dosed again in 20 minutes. I'll have to wait until another time to look at your evidence again. And I said, well, I'm glad you're not anti-psychedelic. At the end of the day, it's a still fascinating experience, no matter what worldview you hold. And then this guy said, I never said it wasn't worth looking into. By all means, look into it and discover the evidence. What you're showing does not count as evidence for anything yet, because it's still unclear what it's showing. Some of the occurrences could be considered strange, but it's far too unclear whether they are simply coincidence or signs of something else. And I don't believe anything without sufficient evidence. If you notice something I believe in that I don't have evidence for, please alert me. I have been spiritual for a while, but I've never met God on this level. There you go. Sorry, that wasn't part of it. This guy said, damn, I just got back from Indonesia. I should have taken some DMT. Sleepy, I respect your passion in pursuit of this line of investigation, but you have to understand that not everyone is a closed-minded materialist who have been brainwashed and can't accept another worldview. Some people just truly feel that way, you know. How come whenever we are taking amphetamines, etc., everyone accepts, oh yeah, this is a dopamine response in the brain causing the activity. But then the same process of taking a crystalline molecule into the body becomes a meeting with God if the molecule is a certain structure. Isn't that problematic? My guess is that at this time would be that the colorful nature of the tryptamine experience triggers memories of the circus environment. Then, just as the brain makes faces out of clowns in the sky and puts clowns and jesters out of the circus background. So yes, the untouched tribe would be interesting. But I consistently see humanoid structures and structured clowns in my open eyes when I'm loaded. It looks like the clown from Poltergeist, and I experience the thrill that I might be pulled under my bed by the entity. I've seen it personally, and the experience is far too personal and clear as to what is being depicted. It is certainly a clown in a carnival, ancient Egyptian type background. Why a clown background? Why a circus background out of all things? It's still a mystery as to why the state has a tendency or habit to produce clown imagery. Supposedly, only when you have the reference. And apparently tryptamines are different because they don't act much in the dopamine pathways, apparently. But amphetamines don't produce such complex and structured and ordered experiences that seem as if someone put extreme amounts of time and effort dreaming up. It's amazing that people can experience that and not wonder or think that there might be more to it than my brain is on drugs. There is clearly a cosmos of meaning and structure and thought-out complexity in the experience. I have explored this phenomenon, and I've seen the prominence of this archetype in my experiences and others, and all of your explanations just don't cut it for such a massively intricate experience. It just seems like an attempt to cover up a miracle. Scientific studies accept way less conclusive evidence than this, and they are rarely questioned. Just feels like there is a compulsion in people to want to protect the status quo. And so here is just the geography of my view counts, so you can get more information on that. So that's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, and 9. Okay. This is probably the first study ever made to test how many people in the general population are associating this archetype to the DMT experience. I believe this data is clear and conclusive as there is a high chance that the occurrence is deeper than just coincidence. Terence McKenna talked about circus and carnivals. He didn't say shit about jesters and clowns. If it was because of Terence McKenna, then the links should be DMT Circus or Carnival DMT, etc., which would also be a link to my video, but yet there are no hits from those phrases. There's always one thing that kept me questioning on whether... Oh, okay, sorry. And then, first off, I'm not trying to be rude, sorry if it comes across that way. Now, disregarding the fact that those graphs aren't labeled, it's pretty hard to see what they are saying besides the raw number of people who search for that. This test is extremely skewed. As previously stated, that there is a number of people who found your video, which was also about the Jester archetypes, so of course a large number of them were searching for what they found. Since you're having a little trouble conducting a sound test, I will help you out a little, because I am too curious about the results. The best way I can think of it to get somewhat of an accurate result is to create a poll on the psychedelic experience form or the pub form, asking how many people saw the Jester opposed to other entities or no entities while on DMT or ayahuasca. I would be happy to make the poll, but I'm at work, so I'll probably have to make it around 7. Although, keep in mind that even if the percentage of people who have seen the Jester is surprisingly high, this doesn't mean that the DMT experiences are created from anything more than your brain or past experiences. Although a high number of people might put into doubt on it being a coincidence. The entities being real or entities being a coincidence are not the only two options. The brain is very complex, and there are many things that we don't understand about it yet, many of which could explain these kinds of experiences. There we go. The fact that this experience only occurs after ingestion of a drug is a smoking gun for the materialist interpretation. That and tolerance buildup. I mean, come on, you must have done too much DMT and experienced tolerance. The experience becomes dull, uninspiring, and clearly a phenomenon of bodily chemistry. There are many ways to explain why you could see clowns, such as the colors and geometry produced by the drug reflecting Circus clown geometry. The emotional triggering of the drug mimics emotion produced when seeing clowns. I personally get the reptilian thing on DMT and the Jester a few times on shrooms. I know it's tempting to have lofty conclusions, but historically the human interpretation of an intuition has been completely inaccurate. That's why the statement, well, this is how it feels to me, this is how my gut feeling is, therefore this is how I'm going to think, is such a ridiculous direction. The human brain tricked the ancients into thinking that the world was flat, and the human brain tricked us into thinking that our world was the center of the universe, and the endless other silly false interpretations by our brain. That is what science is, the use of tools to go beyond the limits of human capacities to see accurate reality. Hey guys, just thought I'd add, I had a friend who did DMT once and experienced clowns everywhere, like a circus as well. Her words, not mine. And I said, I'm not even questioning anymore that jesters and clowns habitually show up in the DMT experience. It's all about compiling the data properly to prove it, and frankly, that's my main concern, because if we can show indisputable proof, then at least psychology would have to change their tune and really look into these tools for mapping out the human subconscious. There is no information about the phenomenon, only in esoteric parts of the internet, aka shroomery. I didn't experience tolerance with DMT, especially if mixed with MAOI, and I've done a fucking lot. I am certain I am not certain if this means it's all material. I think you are jumping to conclusions with that reasoning. I don't quite understand it yet, but the model that we have for the experience need to go. We equate the experience to a short-circuiting of the brain, which is an insult to the structure and complexity and beauty of the experience. Okay. And this guy said, I have not seen the clowns, but I sure as heck have been to the circus a few times. And then I just quoted the Satch guy up there when he said things, just to show a bit of a contradiction in his logic. He said, the fact that this experience only occurs after ingestion of a drug is a smoking gun for the materialist interpretation. that and this tolerance I'm build up. I mean, come on, you must have done too much DMT and experienced tolerance. The experience becomes dull, uninspiring, and clearly a phenomenon of bodily chemistry. And then this is the quote that he said that contradicts what he just said. I know it's tempting to have lofty conclusions, but historically the human interpretation into intuition has been completely inaccurate. That's why the statement, well, this is how it feels to me, this is what my gut feeling is, this is how I'm going to think, is such a silly direction. And then I said, well, I thought you said that science says that your feelings are fundamentally flawed. Sounds like you're contradicting yourself with that statement. And then I said, dosing too much for me did the opposite. It put me into psychosis, and everything in my room came completely to life, which made me realize that there was more to the experience than I previously thought. Remember in Toy Story when Sid finds out that the toys are alive? That's exactly what happened to me.
We toys can see everything. So play nice.
So I said, I was in my basement smoking a lot of DMT out of my electronic vaporizer, and about to smoke again when my TV appeared and controlled by some invisible entity trying to convey a message to me by what was on the TV. The entity kept turning the TV back on after I turned it off multiple times, and then a voice said, leave it on. And then I had an internal dialogue with voices that seemed as if they were family or people I knew from my life or from another dimension in the future or some shit. It was as if I was talking on the cell phone. So fucked up and real. Before that, I have never experienced voices like that. I didn't even know that was possible. I'm always told schizophrenics hear voices. I always thought it was them imagining it and not actually hearing it. But fuck no, it's literally like talking on the phone. The experience was freakishly synchronized in the way that they were conveying their messages to me through a TV show or voices. At that stage, my feelings saying it was clearly not a sign of bodily chemistry, but more of it felt like I was in a 3D modeling software program called 3D Studio Max. After the voices, I had to smoke extremely hard on the DMT vaporizer without fear. It said the word to infinity beyond and look at the TV screen. Charlie Sheen's anger management was on, and after I slammed the vape harder than it broke through with my eyes forced open, I saw that Charlie Sheen's face and body was tessellating in dimensionality as well as the electronics equipment in my dad's electronic labs. There's oscilloscopes and power supplies everywhere, and my whole room is turned into what feels like an alien spaceship with complex alien toddler preschool knickknacks all moving around the floor, and they were originally electronic wire and paraphernalia electronic parts. All the electronic equipment looked like it became technology 1,000 years more advanced than our own. Objects in my room were also tessellating in dimensionality. So that's tessellation. I thought I was finding out that I'm essentially in a video game. That was the very first time things came to life in my open eyes after ingesting DMT. I was smoking so often because the experience was starting to change. It felt as if I was building up or hitting a climax and uncovering some sort of ultimate truth. So I felt as if it was essential for me to receive the experience, and the last monster dose was the climax part of it. The structure was that of a Tool song, I'd say. I was even hearing Danny Carey's drumming ascending to the climax in my trips before the big one. Fuck, writing this brings back neat memories. And then this is in response to what he said about making a poll, and then I said I already did that on DMT Nexus. How would it be any more conclusive? 4 individuals on DMT Nexus posted that they claim to experience the Jester. They aren't even questioning the reality. It's pretty concrete to them. DMT tolerance certainly does exist. And then I said, you also experience visuals when you orgasm. What's your point? I'm not saying chemistry has anything to do with it, but that just might be a trigger for an interconnected change on multiple levels, the physical and I guess the metaphysical. Why is it that it's one or the other? Why can't these mechanisms be linked or symmetrical? If you think DMT gets dull, then you obviously aren't smoking enough. Lifting the same weight after a while gets dull, that's why you lift heavier. and I still don't experience tolerance when I smoke. I often end up in the same corner of hyperspace when I redose. I've never noticed any tolerance with it. I haven't tried MDMA, but DPT is like a weaker form of DMT with no out-of-body experience. And I just want to understand your view. Why is it that when we shortcut the brain with DMT, it works incredibly hard to render complex and aesthetically flawless landscapes and beings of similar archetypes? Not even in dreams does my brain work that hard to render such a scenery. I'm still trying to figure out why you would consider such an invaluable magical phenomenon as dull. And then I said I quoted Einstein, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He to whom this emotion is strange, or who can no longer pause to wonder and stand rampant awe, is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. So that's the quote. And then, and the fact that its realness starts to overshadow the realness of reality, it says something. This is not a meaningless brain malfunction. I'm just trying to understand how you could possibly accept the idea that it's the brain malfunction without question. Why is it that we can accept that dreams have a purpose, like how dreams about running away from something trains you in fight or flight, yet psychedelic trips, which I argue take way more processing power, are meaningless and purposeless? No, I certainly think it's more complex than a short circuit. I understand the experience would need a full understanding of the brain does and to produce our sober reality, which we do not have. Meaningless, purposeless, hell no. Psychedelics are the greatest gift from the earth and have the power to change people positively and save desperate lives, such as they did myself. They have the power to do so many wonderful things, psychology and cleanse a distorted cultural worldview and see the beauty in life and the planet. I have no problem with embedding archetypes in the human being. I just have some problem with jumping to God conclusions when freebasing an isolated molecule that is likely a part of sober reality rendering. That's fair. More experimentation will tell us exactly how deep the experience truly is. Personally, I see a highly structured poetic attributes of the experience in all its archetypes. If you examine the experience in a symbolic and literal sense, it's a genius. Literature sense, it's a genius concept, yet based on something modern science sees no purpose or meaning in. We already have a story on Shermurray where someone dosed a family member or cousin with DMT who has been blind since birth and still saw something. This is important because the brain from birth can't dream images since they have no reference for it, but with DMT that man did for whatever reason. Perhaps the building blocks were built into him and the DMT just stimulated that, but that wouldn't explain why it doesn't happen in their dreams. I wanted to see if there's a spooky action at a distance with DMT by testing it on a culture without the Jester, Clown, Circus archetype reference, and try to find out specific details on what they were seeing and how it differs to what we see. Because we in Western culture habitually describe what we see as a circus, and all the entities seem to relate to that theme for us. If only we could screenshot everyone's headspace and compare it just to see how much stuff is reoccurring and similar between our cultures. Yeah, and it gets more complex when two people experience the exact same thing, but only one person sees a clown and another sees a fox, such as looking at the same cloud in your buddy and seeing different things. And that's what pareidolia is, and I covered pareidolia in my other video, so you can look that up. So I said pareidolia can only explain it if the clown occurrence rate isn't any more significant than a fox. We already have established that out of a mantis and other jungle creatures, the clown archetype is by far the most experienced and prominent. It's like showing an inkblot test to a large group of people, and an abnormally large portion of them say they've seen clowns. Highly unlikely, but yet here we are. Either it's one giant massive coincidence, or there is a clown there. Yeah, true. I think maybe the colors could push the clown occurrence rate. I don't think that's a problem, actually. I mean, check out this heavy farm-Alaska trip I fished out over 3 years ago. Disregard some of the crazy stuff. I was still deep in psychosis. But that stuff was clearly in my open eye. But not too much colors, except for a dark blue tint in my room and some powdering. But they were real enough clowns that I thought I was in danger. And you can read through some of that Trip report. Yeah, I was kind of crazy back then, but I was seeing clowns in my open eye, and I was terrified of them. So, well, I wasn't terrified, but I thought they were gonna attack me or something like that. I thought it was cool, to be honest. And then this guy, in response to my basement story, he said, I've had those kinds of experience quite often. After a brain concussion that apparently induced schizophrenia for part of a year, I realized later. Fortunately, if you decide other people also got to share them and confirm them at the time. If you want weird, you got weird. Because not only was I not imagining it, impossible things kept happening like it was ordinary. It's really what got me started into what I was working on today regarding mushrooms. And he is the one that proposed the idea that psychedelics and its effect on synchronicity is like an entropy effect, or like an anti-entropy effect on reality. That's the guy that was talking about that. And I've experienced that too, so I have a pretty open mind to it. And then this guy said, in response to me saying I already made a poll, he said, well, that's a thread, not a poll. A poll would be much more accurate because it will most likely get more people contributing, since all you have to do is press a button as opposed to writing a paragraph. Not to mention, it's kind of hard to get statistical evidence from a thread, since ignoring all the people who would have answered no because they would have nothing to post anyways. However, I was a little high when I thought of your poll idea. I realize now that it would be much more complicated than I made it seem. We would have to find out how many people saw Jesters, how many times they took DMT ayahuasca, and out of how many times they tripped, how many times they saw the Jester opposed to anything else. Well, first off, it's somewhat accepted that dreams have a purpose because they are something our brain does on its own, and just about everyone's brain does it, although what that purpose is kind of up in the air. And for the record, if you don't believe dreams can render amazing scenery, then you, sir, do not dream often. Your brain can create anything, and you could possibly see or imagine while in a dream, including trip-like experiences. Not only that, but your dreams can undoubtedly create DMT-like experiences because your dreams are actually believed to be caused by DMT naturally occurring in your pineal gland. And then I said, and you don't see the spiritual implications of all that information? I still can't come to any conclusions. I was saying for me personally that if I were to render my dreams in a 3D modeling program versus a DMT trip rendered in a 3D modeling program, the processing power needed would be far more with the DMT trip because it's a much higher poly count. I'm just trying to think of this rationally, since we are apparently computers. And we actually haven't confirmed DMT in the human pineal as of yet, but we have confirmed it in the rat pineal, which is pretty obvious that we have it there as well. And I'm afraid not. I only see scientific implications. What even is spiritual implications? People call something spiritual when they think there's no scientific way to explain it. I am in the view of if history has taught us anything, science can explain everything. It just needs time. Come on, man, the poetry, you don't see it? Well, in any case, I subscribe to the idea that there is no reason spirituality and science can't coexist and be linked in some kind of symmetrical grandfather clock of interconnectivity. And much of my personal experience gives me evidence of the possibility of it. It's still not enough for me to be certain because I have respect for science, so I would like to do whatever evidence I have to be as rigorously tested and proven by scientific method as much as the next rational thinker. I get what you're saying, but it seems to me that the spiritual is used to explain things that science can't. So, that's pretty much a lot of the information. So, we have more evidence with even my videos. People that were posting on that saying that they saw the Jester, and they even provided visuals that were all related. So, I don't know. You guys can sort of, give me ideas on what you think about all that. It seems pretty crazy and sketchy to me. Is it a coincidence or not? You guys decide.